Like Derek said, I'm the co-founder of Ctrl V Virtual Reality Arcade. It is exactly what it sounds like. It's an arcade where you go pay money and play virtual reality games. We have either open, under construction, or looking for a location number of facilities. We've got Waterloo, Hamilton, Guelph, Cambridge, North York, Mississauga, Edmonton, Halifax, Red Deer, Calgary, Kelowna, Kamloops, Regina, Saskatoon, Winnipeg, Halifax, Shelburne, New Jersey, Florida, Texas. We've been around for 1 year. So we've been growing really fast, but prior to doing this, I used to work downtown Toronto in the financial sector in buy-side investment management. So that's sort of the stuff that Warren Buffett does, where he kind of invests in great companies versus good companies and makes sure he gets them at a great price so that they can appreciate them. After a while working downtown Toronto, I kind of said, look, I've been analyzing these companies. I think I have a pretty great talent for finding these great companies. Why don't I bring it to the startup industry? So I kind of left and joined the startup world, and it was sort of poking around to see like how it's structured, what people are doing, how things are working. And the number one problem that I heard from people was funding. They couldn't get funding. So I looked into this funding industry. I said, okay, there's about 3 ways you can get funding. There's you can go to Bay Street and go after the funding there, but it simply had become very much smash and grab. So they'll jack up your price so they can IPO without increasing the intrinsic value. So you'd have a big problem trying to raise the value of your company. The second avenue that funding was usually found was through grants, loans, bursaries, things like that, which always took forever to fill out, and they always required some amount of money in your bank account. And I thought to myself, this is ludicrous. As a startup, who's going to sit there and fill out a 9-month application on 30 grand instead of deploying that capital to get your company running? And then the third way was usually through venture capital or angel investors, which at that time, most of them were tied up in illiquid investments that weren't paying dividends and weren't having successful exits. So everyone was just yearning for money, and when they got money, they were deploying it, in my opinion, very inefficiently. So if you had a salesperson that was running the company, rather than that salesperson increasing their output by 20 or 30%, they would say, let's just hire another salesperson, when they could use that money to hire somebody where they have a deficiency in, like HR or legal or a CFO or something like that. And they would always just sort of strive for, where can I get the next round of funding? They wouldn't focus on the fact that the company could eventually on its own be self-sustaining and build profit and survive on its own. So they were popping bottles of champagne till they got their financing, then they'd blow all this financing, and then they'd say, okay, now what? So what I decided to sort of bring to the community, and I've spoken with a few people, is the theory of economic moats, which is my favorite subject, and I salivate every time I hear that word. An economic moat's based, like a moat is that big like water that surrounds your castle. You know, when you have a castle, so like competitors don't come in. That's exactly what an economic moat is. It surrounds your business to reduce competitors. Because guess what? Capitalism works. So anywhere that there is profit, competitors will come to try to get a piece of that profit. If you have a great economic moat, they won't be able to get in. And a great way to test if there's an economic moat is to see if you're able to raise your price without any severe repercussions. Will people still keep buying your stuff? So I want to talk really quickly about 4 economic moats, big subjects. Warren Buffett, Pat Dorsey, all these guys are always talking about this. The first one is intangibles. Love that economic moat. Brand, everyone's like, yeah, okay, I get brand. Everyone nowadays is a social media brand manager, understands brand. But brand awareness brings you 2 benefits. The one, it increases somebody's willingness to pay, and secondly, it decreases their search costs. So think about like the Tiffany's box, the blue box that everyone pays extra amount of money for because they want to see that smile on somebody's face that they give that to. Those diamonds and that jewelry really isn't that much different from most other jewelry places, but that brand brings that benefit. The second thing when I say decreases search costs is, imagine you go to the grocery store, you see a wall of colas, a wall of ketchup, a wall of chips. Very seldom do you sit there and start analyzing every single brand and seeing what the health benefits of it are and what the price is. You just kind of say, look, I like Heinz ketchup. I've tried it before, I know I like it. You know, this is gonna save time. It decreases your search costs. Second type of moat that I really like is network effect. You know, a lot of people talk about network effect. There are some big problems with the network effect, but when you look at the type of network that you build, First of all, it gains value with the more people that are in it. You know, I'm not going to sign up for a dating website if there's nobody there for me to date. I'm not going to use Visa or MasterCard if none of the stores carry the technology to process it. I'm not going to drive an electric car if I can't recharge it. I'm not going to build a recharging station if nobody drives electric cars. So you've got this sort of, who was I? Brand? What was I talking about? Moats, yeah, okay, network effect, yeah. So the network effect, so when you look at network effect, there's two types. There's ones that have non-linear growth, so something like Facebook, you know, I invite Derek invites 3 friends, they invite 6 friends, it grows non-exponentially. Then there's radial network effect, grows exponentially. There's radial network effect that kind of goes from one point. So it just keeps going out. Those networks are really tough to deal with, okay? Pat Dorsey, which is a big advocate of economic moats, usually talks about Western Union, which, I mean, at this point, most people send money online. So Western Union, you'll send money from Chicago to Mexico, you'll send money from Chicago to Bangladesh, but seldom do you have people sending money from Bangladesh to Mexico, just the nature of the industry. And that also ties into other components of intangibles, patents, right? Like a legal monopoly. The more patents you have, the more they work together, and that's why patent lawyers drive such fantastic cars. It talks about, yeah, okay, so anyways, network effects. Then we've got switching costs. Any of you who work in the tech industry and your servers are based on Oracle, guess how difficult it would be to switch away from an Oracle server to something else? Really tough. These switching costs make your business sticky. You know, it's, if there's a company that has a cheaper product, better product, and more reliable product, that doesn't mean that somebody will de facto get into it, because retraining their staff, setting up all this stuff, probably not worth it for them. They'll be like, I'm okay spending the extra $100,000, $200,000 a year just to keep it up. And then finally, I like low costs, but I don't mean procedural costs, where like the cost of manufacturing my product is cheaper because I outsource it overseas. I'm talking about costs that have to do with the scalability of your business. So I was talking to my friends about shipping companies, FedEx, UPS, DHL, things like that. They've already got a boat and a truck and a plane going to every corner of the planet. So why, like, what's the cost of them shipping one more package? It's almost zero, right? If you're trying to build a company that competes with these guys, you've got an uphill battle. So I guess to round this out is, when you're building your companies, when you're trying to create a startup, think like a prudent investor, somebody who'd be looking for a competitive advantage, somebody who'd be looking for an economic moat. Combine that and try to build a product that has that. I mean, there's tons of other things you need to consider, whether it's consumer demand and what the feasibility of the product is. But if you focus on economic moats, you know, you've got a pretty bright future. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Robert. So first question for me, which of these are you looking to apply a Ctrl V right now?
We're working right now heavily with intangibles. So we've put some things in place that allows our competitors a difficult time to compete with, specifically partnerships with our hardware providers that they won't give to anyone else in the world, that decreases costs. Things like licenses. Licenses are great. I mean, governments can only hand out so many licenses. If you're in the medicinal marijuana industry or a casino industry or a landfill industry, you can only have so many of those around. So we're working heavily in the intangible economic mode. Cool.
By the way, if you haven't been to Ctrl V before, it is the coolest arcade. I'm like a huge fan when I went to the one sort of close to here. So as you're talking about some of the markets you expanded to, I heard Regina, Hamilton, New Jersey, whereas like most tech stops I hear like San Francisco, New York, Los Angeles, those bigger cities. So as you're assessing these markets, which you've expanded to in such a short period of time, what made it so appealing to go to those smaller markets that are, I guess, relatively unheard of compared to those big cities?
Sure. We don't develop the hardware, nor do we develop the software. We're just a service provider. And the service that we provide caters to everyone. Like our client base, like I'm not even exaggerating, we had 4 generations of women come in from like 3 years old to 94 playing mini golf together. So it really does cater to everyone. It's really well priced, so everyone can afford it. So really when we look to expand, we look more towards population density. Ooh.